All right.
I
Well,
think,
if you don't mind,
right?
I will speak English for the most part. If you need any explanation, please raise your hand. I hope I'll be able to see it in the participants' reaction section. All right. Okay. So today we'll talk about EFL activities online, and let me please correct our speaker Asiel. It's not about games online, it's about activities, so learning activities. There is a huge difference in EFL, English language teaching, between two concepts: playing a game and having an activity. Activities are more structured and meaningful, as opposed to games, which are just filling in for the time, or a fun for the sake of fun. The difference is game uh, is mostly described as a fun, engaging activity, whereas a learning activity and a language activity is mostly aimed at learning and improving the skill, and maybe less at fun. So they're not necessarily fun, but they're still meaningful. All right, so my motto for today is that activities should be kept as real as possible. So thank you for introducing me. I said one more time really quickly, I'm an EFL teacher. I am from Pavlodar. I teach all levels and all ages. You can see my picture here, taken a few years ago, where I'm younger and more beautiful, in front of my school, Lingua Grad, where I act as a director of studies. I mostly specialize in teaching exams, academic courses, but since I'm a teacher trainer and for the school, I collaborate with all ages, all levels, various backgrounds, and and supervise several general English courses. So I'm very familiar with the teaching general English environment. Um, if you would like to give me some more information about yourselves, you could type this information in the chat. I will be more than happy to read that, and maybe I will adapt what I'm telling you today to your environment of teaching, to your background of teaching. I'll do my best. Okay, so the more information you give me, the more I'll be able to adapt the course of the talk and see how our online activities can be improved. To begin with, when Asiel asked me to come up with a topic for today, um, she was like, "Oh, just do something about online teaching, something online teaching." And I've done several workshops for teachers so far, talks, master classes. Teaching online environment is not new for me, but when Asel asked me to share my expertise, I asked myself, okay, I remember that recently we ran a survey among teachers, and there were about 100 teachers participating in an online event. So among those participants, um, I asked just one question: what have you found the most challenging while teaching online? I asked this question in April, when all of us, due to pandemic, were tied to our screens and teaching only through the screens. And surprisingly, my expectation was that most teachers would say that keeping students engaged, or managing the class and keeping the students' attention would be the most um, challenging part. But no, contrary to my belief and expectations, the majority, as you can see, more than 60%, said that they have fun, have problem coming up with fun and engaging activities. And I was surprised, because how come? I mean, online environment is already fun and engaging, but apparently there is something that we do wrong, that prevents us from making the activity interesting. So let's start by asking ourselves just one question: do I use we teach online teaching online? We're tied to technology, we're tied to our screens, laptops, desktops, or some tablet devices. And the very first question you need to ask yourself: do I use technology to teach in a certain way? So let me check how engaged you are at the moment. In what way? What anagram is this word. Can you decipher the anagram to show me your engagement? I see few people. Yeah, feel free to turn on your cameras. I'd be more than happy to see you. Maybe Aida can help me with the anagram.
I'm thinking. I have no idea.
Maybe somebody else would like to engage. Did anybody maybe type in the chat? Oops. Sorry. I think I helped you. So what's the word?
Meaningful.
Meaningful. So first question we need to ask ourselves, do I use technology in a meaningful way? What I mean by meaningful learning is these few things. By definition, meaningful learning is the learning that supports and enables growth. So it's kind of learning and teaching that allows our students to improve a skill. Of course, the prime purpose is to improve the speaking, the writing skill of English, but there are other skills involved with the use of technology because we use a lot of other skills through the technology. We use our cognitive skills, our motor skills, the typing, even the typing skills, the motor skills of navigating in the online environment when using the computer, the skill of communication, the relationship skills. So, first ask yourselves, do I use technology in a way that promotes meaningful learning? Is this the way that supports, enables growth, changes the person's lives, and makes some difference? If the answer to all these questions is yes, then there is something that it means that our teaching and learning can be modified and made interesting. If the answer is yes, we need to the answer is no, we need to work out how to make that difference. Thank you for turning on your cameras. I'm really happy to see your faces. I feel more engaged in this way. I really appreciate that. So, meaningful learning. Let's have some fun. First, I'd like you to watch this short commercial. The task is watch the video and determine if this is the right use of technology. Just one question. Is this the right use of technology? Okay, just give me a second to navigate to this short video.
So, Dad, I've been meaning to ask you, how's it going with that new iPad we got you for your birthday?
Good.
Yeah, the app's working okay?
Apps? What apps you talking about?
Okay, so back to my question. Was this the right example, the right use of technology?
No.
Obviously not. The person is using a very expensive iPod as a chopping board. This is ridiculous. Of course, this is wrong. Let's take a look at one more example that I've prepared. Watch this second video and determine if this is the right use of technology. If this is a meaningful use of technology. Okay? Second video. Just a second. Give me a second to make sure. Tuk, tuk, tuk. Are you able to see the picture? The second.
Emma. Huh? Emma. 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 Emma.
And the second example, okay? Was this the right or meaningful use of technology? Was it better than the previous one?
Yes.
Yeah, because in the first example, obviously the person was using technology in a totally wrong way. In the second example, the the dad was trying to explain how to use the technology so that it makes life easier, so that it actually makes difference, so that the technology supports, enables, and changes the life for the better. And this is the second example, is what we need to be aiming at. If we manage to use technology in this way, learning will be achieved. If not, it will be just rote learning, the typical rote learning. So, how to adapt the technology and language learning, bring them together, and make and create this engaging communicative environment. There is an approach called RAT. It has nothing to do with these ugly rats running around. RAT is a just first letter acronym which stands for replace, amplify, and transform. I'm sure that you understand the meaning of all three words. To replace something, right? To change from one place to another. Amplify, it means make stronger. And transform, change the form of something. What is meant by that is this. In a real life lesson, let's say it's a face-to-face lesson, okay? And the real lesson, I teach writing. I teach a lot of writing. I teach IELTS writing a lot. So my real task would be write an essay. That's a task for the classroom. Well, when I teach online, it's not as simple as that, because I need to replace, amplify my activity, and maybe transform it a little bit. So what I do, I replace activity by asking the students not to write an essay, but to type the essay, so that the activity is more realistic. It's not realistic to teach something and still through the screen, and then ask your students to write it on a piece of paper, take a picture of it, and send it through WhatsApp or send it through the camera. This is absolutely not realistic. That's not how the real world works. In the real world, if you communicate through a computer, then you communicate through typing. So the teacher should open up this space and be ready to accept writing pieces in a typed form. Secondly, I would, one way is just to ask my students to write an essay. But with a computer and technology, I can amplify the task and make it more interesting. I can transform the activity and ask my students to change this essay into a blog post. Like maybe find a blog which has the same cause, place this, write your essay, write your paragraph inside a blog, and add a visual to it, or add a photo, add a video. This way, the activity would also include not only typing skill, but the searching skill and the cognitive skill of bringing together the image and the text. So critical thinking will be involved. A third way would be to transform the activity. Instead of asking my students to write an essay, I could ask them to type main points and then make a short video using a phone camera or a computer camera, and tell me about this experience, like what the images that they have found and other things. So this is very, very possible to transform your activities from simply using a book. I know that when we were all pushed into quickly transforming to online teaching, teachers had to quickly digitalize all their typed kind of worksheets. So what happened was teachers took their work and just put it in an electronic typed form, or they took, for example, their course books, scanned some pages, and just started to demonstrate their pages through the screen. But the teaching and the activities stayed the same. It kept to the purpose, but what happened was that the activities stopped being meaningful or realistic, because it's not realistic to look at a scanned page of a book. It's really not. And students quickly lost the interest in activities like that. So I want to show you a few ways of of how to make your activities meaningful and really realistic for your online classroom. So for this next part, I'd like you to look. I will show you a few examples, several examples. And for each example, I want you to answer 2 questions. Is this a typical activity and a typical example from a course book? And is this how we communicate in real life? Okay? All right. Example number 1. Is this a typical activity? Is this a typical example of a task from a course book? Yes or no? Or nod?
Yes. Yes.
Very typical, yeah? We see that a lot.
Yeah.
But is this how we communicate in real life? Do we really match the picture of a cloud to the understanding of cloud?
No.
No, that doesn't happen in real life at all. So when you, in the morning, when you wake up and look outside and decide what to wear, you don't match images to what you see outside your outside your window. You just have something differently. Okay, so definitely this task is not realistic at all. This task has a purpose of helping students to memorize the vocabulary, but it's still not realistic at all. And by scanning this page and making it digital, I didn't make it a tiny bit more realistic. It just became more confusing. Can you, Asil, can you make sure that all the microphones are mute, please? Because I can't control this. You didn't give me any control of the microphones. Okay, let's take a look at the second example. Just a second, let me see. Oh, there you go. All right, there you go. Now I finally muted everybody so that I can focus on what I'm saying. I'm sorry for that. Let's take a look at one more example. Is this a typical example from a course book? Like read a text, blah, blah, blah. Study the image, then watch a video or listen to something and be ready to complete some notes. Is this typical? Is it? Do we have such examples in course books? Some people are writing notes. There's a chat. Yes, a little different, but yes. But generally people say, yes, it is typical. We have similar tasks. Maybe look at the text and then watch something, study something and complete the notes. But is it realistic? Do we really do that in real life? Do we really watch, for example, the documentary about the Amur tiger and then take notes about this tiger? Maybe not. We don't really take notes on what we watch on the TV. So something has to be changed. And take a look at this third example. Is this a typical example? It's usually unit 1 in a book. Is it typical? Is that something that you would see in a typical course book? I see people responding in chat. Yes, thank you. Yes, that's what you would typically see in a course book. But in real life, when you're communicating with people, do you create such personal profiles on a piece of paper? Even in the page of a book? And again, the answer is not, because that's not how the real life works. The fact that I scanned these pages and brought it to the screen didn't make my activity meaningful, realistic, or interesting for a student. Because you still have to, in order to complete any of these activities, my students would still have to take a piece of paper and a pen and make some notes and scribble in their notebooks, which is not realistic. As soon as you transform to online teaching, forget the use of paper, forget the use of pen, and bring the other motor skills into the action. Help students develop those simultaneously, and this way they will appreciate and they will see that the activities that you're doing in class are more realistic. What I mean by that is the following. Look, if I take example number 3, and I want to focus on the verb to be and making introductions of classes and so on, my way of making this activity more realistic would be not to scan the page and ask my student to complete the gaps. My activity would be go to a Facebook page or Tonkikh or any other social media. Go to this part of introductory part and let's complete it together. Let's complete it online by physically typing stuff in, by completing and creating realistic profiles in a realistic digital environment. Facebook, say it's a very realistic and popular social media. Maybe our students don't use Facebook that much. They prefer using Tonkikh or any other Russian social media. So we could just use a Facebook fake new page to help them do 2 things: practice writing personal profile and creating something absolutely genuine, realistic, and true in English. So, and I don't need to scan any pages for that. I just go to a realistic example that students would use in the world. Another thing is this one. We all said that an example of scanning a page like that is not helpful at all. A student is not going to feel that this is a meaningful activity. It's just vocabulary learning. But if you, instead of doing this, you direct students to a typical page on their mobile phones. If they go to, say, weather app on the phone and they change the phone to English, there's so much more they can learn realistically using their phone. Because in the morning when you wake up, you go to the window to check your weather and you open up your screen to see how the weather will change during the day, what I should wear, and compare it, for example, to the weather in a different city of Kazakhstan. This can be done by just simply allowing your students to use the technology, the app, and not by scanning the pages. So that's what is meant by making activity realistic and meaningful, to enable them to use English in a true and natural environment. Now I'd like to hear some of your examples. There are lots of pages you could, from books, that I could bring and ask you, okay, how to make this, and give you suggestions on how to make this more realistic. But I need some suggestions from you. Okay, your turn. Is this a typical page from a course book? Think about it. It is pretty typical. From any course book has a unit on giving directions, and there is some random map of a random city in Great Britain or New York, and the task is to give directions. If I scan this page and show it to my students, not realistic at all, because that's not how we communicate and give directions in real life. Think about it. I'm going to give you 2 minutes to think how to turn this activity, this page, into a more realistic digital environment activity. And while you're doing that, I've just discovered that my battery is dying, so I will quickly fix that. Oh, sorry. Sorry. Okay, while you... Let me just fix my battery. Okay, I'm back, and now my computer is not dying. There is still possible. So, your suggestions. Where is the chat? Okay, let me see the chat. Okay, there's some people typing in chat. Yes, Aida is saying, and use Google Maps. Zarina. Yes, map on the phone. Google Maps, 2GIS or 2GIS or whatever it's called in in English. Turn your activity all of a sudden into the use of Google Maps because it's more natural. It happened to me yesterday. I was walking on the street and a lady came up to me and she asked, "What is the number of this house?" She was in her 70s, maybe, quite old lady. And I didn't know because I wasn't in my neighborhood. I had no idea what was the number of that house, but I wanted to help her. And even in my native language, what I did, I opened my phone, looked at the map, and I was like, oh, this house is blah, blah, blah. And in the real world, this is what would happen. Nobody goes around with a paper map anymore. So what's the point of scanning and giving this page to students? No point at all. Change this activity, if something is even in New York or what you call it, London, can easily be transformed into an online thing, because you could access the map of New York easily. Well, let's check that, okay? Because what if I'm lying, right? What if I'm wrong? Let's go. There you go. And let's say I want to go to a typical place in on English course books. That would be Times Square. Times Square. Ba-bam! I already found this place. It's a Times Square. Looks very realistic, and I wanna know how to get to Times Square. Here it is. I can easily see, let's say, from a Broadway theater. So what I would do, I would teach my students on how to use the directions map and go from here to, let's say, Broadway theater. They should be really close, and the thing suggests me to walk. It's 5 minutes long. There you go. And what if I cycle? If I cycle, it's gonna be only 1 minute. All right, let's say I'm a big fan of some film, and in that film for example, in the film where everybody has fun at the museum. What's the name of the museum in a popular film? Museum of Natural History. Yeah, The Night at the Museum, for example. So I believe it's Museum of Natural History. Museum. Oh, there is a Museum of Sex. Museum of Ice Cream. Oh, wow, cool. There is a Museum of Modern Art. Bam, a typical thing. So if I decide to go to two places, it's going to take me much longer. And if I change the mode of transport, if I decide to take a car, there are so many variations. There are so many speaking opportunities that I could create for my students through the use of these things. I can, by changing one activity in a digital form, I can easily go to talking about where can I buy groceries on the way, and how many hotels I could find, and things like that. So this is the point of changing an activity into an online form. Let me give you one more challenge. How about this one? Again, is this a typical page from a course book? I love it. It's like create speaking practice. I took these examples particularly from Macmillan course book from Gateway, but I've seen those in many others. And I would say that this is a quite typical way of presenting information in a course book. if I also scan the page, digitalize it, and tell my students, okay, students, go ahead, I want you to do this. Quite likely my activity is not going to be successful at all. Because is that how teenagers communicate these days? Nope, they're not. Oh, so there were. Oh, something happened to my Google Maps. I just noticed. Okay, now I see. Okay, can you see the picture now? The dialogue, yes, student A to student B. Is this a typical example from a course book? It is. But in the real world, is that how teenagers communicate? Is that how you communicate? Like, do you really talk to your friend like that while you're at work? No, everybody says no, that's not how we communicate, because in real life, how do we communicate? We definitely don't use that. That's what we use. We use a chat to agree and disagree on things, to invite each other, to decline an invitation, and so on. To agree to have this, for example, session, Asil and I communicated here. We didn't talk at all. It's not realistic. So a way of making this activity realistic from a course book would be change this into a chat. Allow your students to use maybe WhatsApp chat, or there are lots of variations how you could use that. You could use a Padlet. A Padlet, I'm sure you've seen that before. It has lots of, most people use Padlets like that, by just to organize their materials and creating different things. But Padlet has a lot more to offer. If you click here, make a Padlet, you can easily create a chat for your students. It's called back channel option right here. You create a back channel. Sorry, I need to click. Can you see? Can everybody see? Because Zarina is already using social media. Okay, thank you, Zarina. And this is, for example, if you don't want to allow your students to have your phone number or to engage in a communication with them, you could create a temporary chat, which looks like that. And you will have your students communicating online by just sharing the link with them. That's how it looks. Hello. Babam. Hi. What's up? Bam. And you could have several students communicating at the same time. We can even experience it now. For example, look, I'm gonna copy the link and give it to all of you. Where's our chat? No chat. Bam. If you click this link, you will be able to add your messages to this very chat. And this way our activity would be more realistic and more meaningful for a student. Hey, there you go. Okay, I have more people replying. Yeah, there you go. There you go. You see, it works. And bam, bam, bam. This way you could have several students, your whole class, even if you have 30 students, they could all be online at the same time, chatting to each other, completing the task, but at the same time doing it more realistically. Typing instead of speaking, because that's not what you do in a virtual environment. In a virtual environment, you mostly communicate through writing. And just to demonstrate to you that, I mean, you could continue doing this. That this thing really works. We've tried it with students multiple times, and it's not something that I've just made up for this session. There you go. Just a second, it's just loading. Let's reload. It's not loading for some reason. Oh, there you go. You see? This is another chat which students had while being in an online class. They gave their feedback. They said if the idea was interesting. They used this particularly to give feedback, and it worked just fine and just well because the students could engage in it simultaneously and naturally. So, if I could go back to my slides. So the point is that we need to adapt to online learning environment. We need to keep in mind that it's not enough to just scan a page, make a PowerPoint presentation and put it on screen and keep doing the same thing as we would do in class. We need to really rethink the activities and stick to the rule of RAT. That as opposed to just using the activity which you planned for a real class, scan it and go online, you need to think about how to replace it, amplify it and transform so that the learning that's happening in the classroom is supportive, changing and develops more than one skill. So there you go. That's the main idea for today. If you have any thoughts, ideas or suggestions, I'd like to hear those. If not, I'll be... Yes, absolutely. I will go ahead and answer any questions that you have. Ani is asking if we can use this during your lessons. Yes, absolutely. Padlet is absolutely free. And you could create any Padlet you want. Just copy and paste the link as I did just now, and your students will be able to use it simultaneously. If you want, you register. If not, you can just do it very quickly. Okay, you're welcome, Annie. Yes, a good point. Very often students find registration process really difficult. But if you create like an online chat with Padlet, you don't need any registration, I guarantee that. If we talk about creating social media accounts, here's your other learning point. Instead of telling your students create an online profile by yourselves at any time, you could ask your students to let's create this online profile together, and then you can troubleshoot whatever questions they have during the registration by doing this together. And if you do it together, as opposed to a teacher showing something and everybody's looking and repeating, by using in online classes, everybody has a chance to try it themselves, try their motor skills and apply the skill right away. They don't need to write things and then present a poster in class. No, they could do it right away, and then everybody could befriend each other and see how the profile was complete, for instance, how it was completed. Of course, there are more than one or 3 or 4 ideas that I've presented, and many of these ideas are born on the go, really, because nobody really taught me that. It's just every time I teach online, very often I rely on the same paper course books that I would in a regular class. But as soon as my format changes from face-to-face communication in class to online, I do an extra mile. I think, okay, how can I make this page more interactive and realistic for my students? It's not about just look at the picture and let's do the same thing by hand, but I try to make it realistic for the real world. I always ask myself, is that how we use this topic and this activity in the real world? Usually the answer is not, and I just need to think a little bit how to make it more realistic. Recently, I stepped upon an article called 25 Ways of Using WhatsApp. I saw earlier that several people said that I use WhatsApp messaging with your students. And that's great. That's great that you use WhatsApp messaging with your students. At the school where I work, we've created like a digital document for students, for teachers, that says online teaching tools. And there are several tips here on how you can use online tools to make your teaching interactive and more digital. I am willing to share this document with you. There is a really interesting article here on 25 ways of using WhatsApp. And if I click, let me show you it will show you this document which I created for my team. And even with one simple messenger, WhatsApp, there are 25 practical applications how English skills can be used and used realistically and interactively. I am more than willing to share this document with you, but in order to do that, I will need your emails. Therefore, to make this process easier and so that I don't need to retype anything, I'll ask you to scan this QR code that you can see right here. Scan it and it will take you to a short feedback form. Leave your email in this feedback form and I'll send you the tips, the online tips that we've created at my school. All right. Or I could give you a link to this thing right now. Just a second. Because Tux and... Sorry. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask. A link. Camilla is asking for a link. I believe it's a feedback form. Just a second. I'll give you the link to this because not everybody can use the scanner, the QR code scanner. Feedback, teacher training feedback form. There you go. Just a second. And or I can give you a short URL link. How do you do that? There's the chat. Okay, I'm gonna give you a link to this form, and by completing this link, by completing this form, you will leave me your email, and I will collect all the emails and send you the form that we devised with several ready-to-go activities. Or feel free to contact me at the contacts presented to you here at this form. You could contact me through Instagram or through my email address and other things. If you have no further questions, I'll stop streaming. Let me know if you have any questions. No
or
questions.
Dear teachers, you can text to us too and ask your questions.
Если вы стесняетесь на английском спросить, можете на русском меня спросить. Если вопросов нет, тогда мы будем закругляться. А для тех, кто пропустил, American Corner выложит эфир. Правильно я понимаю, Сель?
Да,